Welcome to Reality and the latest episode of Framework and our ongoing John Carpenter series. John Carpenter's Frameworks, the podcast, something like that. This week we are talking about, the last of the great Carpenter films, in my opinion, In the Mouth of Madness, starring Sam Neill, coming out in 1994. With me, as always, is the other host of Framework. Al, how are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. Just, clinging to the last vestiges of sanity, as are we all.
Yeah, I mean, the world could end at any moment for any reason, beyond our understanding. And joining us, again, back to the program, Matt Rose. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, we've been kind of building up to this one. I feel the last couple episodes, we've been like, well, this one's interesting and all, but coming up, In the Mouth of Madness, and that, won't that be a day? Well, it's here. We're talking about this one. This is, it's not going to be long before I reveal that I love this, so I'll just do it right now. This is one of my favorites. I think an imperfect masterpiece, the best of late era Carpenter, and just one hell of a film altogether. Something that doesn't have a lot of.
Can you define late era to me?
I'm going to say late era starts with Memoirs of Invisible Man.
Oh, okay.
90s.
90s, yeah. 90s and beyond.
Okay.
90s and beyond.
That laurel means suddenly carries a lot less weight as you draw if you draw the line before or after they live, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is the outlier in that sense of the late era, because Carpenter has a famously weak late era. He really sort of tapers off there. Kind of feels like all his best stuff is behind him at a certain point, but we are not there yet because he made In the Mouth of Madness in 1994. And this is him at his, if not his absolute best, real close, I think. This is an interesting film, the kind of thing that nobody can make, that not just anybody can make. Rather, this is this has authorial voice. This has originality and creativity and new ideas. You can see the inspiration, obviously, but that said, I don't think anyone's done a better Lovecraft film than this.
Not Reanimator or From Beyond, or
I like this more than any of the Stuart Gordon ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are good. Reanimator is real good, but it's also a comedy, and that is sort of antithetical to Lovecraft in a lot of ways. I don't know, that is a big statement. The best Lovecraft thing. I mean, you could make an argument that The Thing is a Lovecraft thing, and that is a better film. But this is the movie I think captures the voice of Lovecraft better than any other film that I've seen. And it's not even an adaptation.
The actual voice of Lovecraft is not really something people have chased that much. No. Because he is, in addition to being, as you noted, pretty humorless, also real racist.
Sure.
In a way that, based on a little bit of his that I've glanced at, really comes through in the writing in a way that it's not just like the personal life separate from the art.
Yeah, you can't do that with him.
Yeah, or even like, you say, the times people were really racist back then. They were, but
he was more.
It's not even like,
he was more
like
racist.
Tolkien, where you feel like the Moors of Tolkien's time coming through and how he like portrays and like doesn't shade in like people, swarthy peoples from the east and the south of his white cultures. But like the text of Tolkien is about like how racism is bad, at least between white races, and they need to learn to work together. And that's sort of like a tension that's underlying with Lovecraft. Yeah, he was way out ahead of his day in terms of racism.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff about mixing blood and defiled lineage and stuff like that, debased de-evolutionary paths for genetics that's all based in fear of missignation and the other, and
I feel like even that makes it sound more subtextual than it is.
Oh yeah, he's just straight up racist in a lot of stories too. Yeah. But
this movie doesn't have any of that in there, though. If you should clarify.
It sounds like it feels like it's trying to be Lovecraft without paying any sort of rights to the estate.
That's certainly part of it.
Yeah.
It's the ideas. It's the ideas of cosmicism, not tethered to the specifics of Lovecraft stories and their various limiting tropes and racisms. Those are hard to adapt. Lovecraft stories. There's a reason that most people take the ideas but don't do the actual stories. Like Reanimator, for example. The movie and the book are very different deals. Very, very different in tone, in plot, in every single way. The common ground is there's reanimating going on between them. That's about it.
Yeah.
John, did you ever see early 90s movie called Cast a Deadly Spell?
I love Cast a Deadly Spell. Oh, yeah. Terrific. Yeah. That's a blast.
Okay, okay, good. I want to be sure that you knew about that because that's, he's Detective Lovecraft in it, the actor.
Fred Ward. Yeah. Uh-huh. Have you heard of this, Al?
And that was a fun movie.
I have not.
Oh, I
think they even made a sequel, too.
They did. It's not as good. It's called Witch Hunt.
Okay.
It's about the Red Scare, but also actual witches. Cast a Deadly Spell is it's an early 90s, probably about the exact same time as this, actually. Basically, how to put this? It's film noir Lovecraft. I guess the easiest way to make this sense of this would be Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but instead of cartoons, it's monsters.
That sounds awesome.
That's excellent, actually. That's a great way. That's a great way of describing it. Yeah, it was. I remember. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a blast.
It sounds like the movie that Guillermo del Toro should have been making.
It's a very Del Toro movie
for the last 20 years.
It's a very Del Toro film. It has a good ass cast aside from Fred Ward. David Warner from In the Mouth of Madness is in it. A couple other famous people: Clancy Brown, Julianne Moore. It's good. And yeah, that one is a strong rank. It is also not particularly Lovecrafty, despite referencing the Necronomicon and all that stuff. Just because it's it's about private detectives and fatales and stuff, and can accurately be be as Who Framed Roger Rabbit with monsters. But
it's kind of. Yeah. I recall Fred Ward. I call Fred Ward playing it kind of like Sam Spade, kind of Humphrey Bogart.
Oh yeah.
But navigating a world of where magic exists. And it's a taken for granted where that magic exists, and you got monsters and all that. Yeah, it's a fun movie, worth checking out. I wonder if that's on Max. Anyway,
it should be. Out. Yeah, strong recommend on that one. Really cool film.
You had me at Clancy Brown and Julianne Moore. That's two favorites of mine.
Yeah,
it looks like it is on Max. I might have to go check that out.
As we are approaching the Halloween season, that is everyone should check that out along with In the Mouth of Madness if they haven't seen it. Both great early 90s kind of Lovecraft horror pastiches that kind of slipped through the cracks a little. They both got their small cult followings at this point, but I don't know. Has In the Mouth of Madness attained real cult classic status yet? I don't know. I think it's getting there.
It feels like it's close.
It is among Carpenter fans. It's pretty universally appreciated.
Yeah.
I don't know if its reach extends beyond people who are specifically into John Carpenter. But I want to go back to the sort of issue of authorship that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
Because there is, coming off of Invisible Man, especially, like the Carpenter score here starts before the production logo even comes up. And that is just a balm, like a reassuring, like, oh, okay. Like this is going to be a Carpenter movie. Like the score's not like, I don't think it even matches the movie that well. It's like too heavy and crunchy. It's like, seems to be setting up an action movie rather than this cerebral horror thing. But coming off Invisible Man, it is just manna from heaven.
Oh, the opening guitar, it's the Enter Sandman-ish.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, supposedly he wanted to actually use Metallica's Enter Sandman. Instead, he just kind of couldn't get it, so he just kind of stole the riff.
Okay, yeah, because it's an absolute riff, or pardon the turn of phrase, but it's an absolute riff on Enter Sandman, and it's pretty well done actually. I dug it. I was having fun with it before the movie started, watching the printers kicking out covers and everything. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, even though the book publishing imagery of the opening credits isn't like amazing, isn't all timer, that still is kind of a wonderful opening credit sequence just because that score, and just because it feels like, okay, I'm really I'm sitting down for something now. This is gonna be a fun one. It is John Carpenter Enter Sandman butt rock with that familiar font that he uses all the time on his films as these names pour over, and just like yes, more of this. It's you feel like you're back in good hands here after Memoirs.
But also, returning to the question of authorship, one of the names, in John Carpenter credits, you expect to see John Carpenter's name show up a bunch of times because he wears so many hats. I was surprised this time. I mean, I'd seen this like 20 years ago once, and I didn't realize until I'm sitting here watching the credits that he did not write this one himself.
Michael DeLuca.
Right. Who apparently is like the head of Sony now or something like that, or one of the big studios.
He was a big studio head he's moved around a lot. He's had an interesting career. This is something he, wrote when he was an aspiring Hollywood guy, which, you wouldn't expect a studio head to write a movie, especially not a weird one like this.
No. Well, he wasn't a studio head at the time. At the time, like he said, he was like 20 years old, which is kind of incredible. Like why does a 20-year-old settle on this concept for their big script?
Why not?
Like
it does not feel like a 20-year-old story for sure.
I disagree. I disagree. I remember. I mean, when I was in college in my 20s, we were all into role-playing games, Lovecraft, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, all that kind of stuff. This would have been right up my alley. So, yeah, I can, depending upon what you're into and what you're having fun with, this would have been absolutely right up your alley. So.
Well,
anyway.
Okay, like I could see being into watching this movie as a 20-year-old. It's the things that make it confusing to me are that it is very homage driven, but not in like a really immature sort of like, self-insert type of way. Yeah. And like the hero being a like 40-something-year-old insurance investigator, that feels to me like something that a 40-year-old would write, not something a 20-year-old would write. It's a good protagonist for this film. But also, so I mean, I'm impressed that he did this at all. However, I will say, and here's where I reveal my mask. I don't love this movie. There's some parts about it that just fundamentally don't like come together for me. But something that clicked for me here is, this being written by a 20-year-old helped me understand how this is a movie that is so heavily metatextual, but also seems like it's kind of lacking in subtext. Like it doesn't have a really strong take on like the nature of fiction, which is weird for something that is so much about fiction. Like the written word here is sort of like a transmission vector for the demonic, infection or transformation we've seen to, I think, greater effect in The Thing and Prince of Darkness. And it doesn't really say anything. I mean, it doesn't reflect that much to me on anything about actual narrative fiction or, paperback narrative fiction of this in the Stephen King mold that Sutter Kane supposedly operates in.
I think it is a theme of the story. And I do think that Michael DeLuca as a young screenwriter, a new screenwriter, and one who has not had other credits to his name, I suspect that, despite however the arbitration ends up and his name is the sole credit, I feel Carpenter's voice in this story. I feel like this is the kind of story that a guy who's been making horror films for 20 years would have some input on. And I feel his themes and his kind of guys coming through this throughout. I think the nature of stories is something that a lot of horror auteurs in general were kind of wrestling with. In the 90s in specific here. I'm reminded of like Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Craven, Stephen King himself.
Certainly. I mean, this turns into Dark Tower a little bit. Some of the stuff you hate about Dark Tower.
The stuff I hate about Dark Tower, not the stuff I love about it.
But I don't know. We'll talk about that later in the metatextual sense. But it is he is conscious of the power of stories here. And yes, it is kind of literally as a vector for the elder beasts returning to Earth in this. But I think that is the metaphor. That is the the effect that the written word has on its people. That was another thing we were big on in the 90s. Was like, are video games to blame for school shootings or whatever? Is Doom the problem? Is that why Columbine happened? How does media affect us? And I think the smartest people that were talking about that were like, well, of fucking course media affects us. Of course it has a negative effect on some people. The question is, what do we do with that? If we acknowledge that, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm giving In the Mouth of Madness a little too much credit connecting it to that. But it is about people getting fucked up by the things they consume.
Yeah. I feel myself like reaching to try and connect some of those dots more and create this whole like subtextual reading of this where it that is more relevant to our present day and, you know, radicalization based on the type of media that you consume and all that. And it's just,
I found some of that.
The Stephen King airport paperbacksness of it is so literal that it's hard for me to really like sew that reading together in a way that feels, honest to me.
I always love the fact that they make a point of saying that Sutter Kane is not Stephen King. Oh, Sutter Kane outsells Stephen King, just so you're not having to make that, okay, they're not directly riffing on Stephen King.
Which is weird because they are directly riffing on Stephen King. They are
absolutely, but they're. I know.
Well, yeah, I know. They don't want to pay him either. Yeah. They want to pay him any more than they want to pay the Lovecraft estate.
Sure, I know, but
that's great from a financial perspective.
Sure,
it's also it does make the meta stuff more tolerable because I mean, John knows well that I have a standing distaste for metatextual crap, but that's not exactly what my beef with this movie is. And it's the metatextual stuff here does not feel self-indulgent the way I think it kind of always does in other cases, partly because Sutter Kane is so like clearly, to my eye anyway, not a stand-in for Carpenter. He's this Lovecraft Stephen King mashup that does not feel, and like, if anything, Sam Neill is more of a Carpenter stand-in than Sutter Kane is. It's how I read it.
It's just in that he's kind of a dick. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, it's kind of a dick, and it seems to know he's a Carpenter protagonist where he's like, he meets the female lead. He's like, hey, I'm going to have some casual 40-year-old sex here. And he doesn't actually do it in this one.
I think he should have, honestly.
He thinks he's playing a Peter.
I think that's something they needed, a sex scene, a creepy sex scene. That should have happened.
Well,
but whatever. It's fine.
You get a creepy makeout scene? Does that do anything for you?
That scene is way out of left field and just does not fly. But yeah, I mean, it is funny how Sam Neill plays the protagonist just as a complete douchebag the entire movie. He really is. He's fun. A complete asshole. But that's part of, I'll chime in here and say this is a movie that I really like, but I don't love. And my issues with it, I think that I have issues with either Sam Neill's performance or Sam Neill's character because it varies in tone. But in many cases it does work because I think it also factors in for me that a lot of the acting in the movie is bad, but I think deliberately bad, just to be kind of tonally off. Maybe, and I was thinking about that while I was watching it again, going, maybe it's deliberately, the dialogue and the acting is deliberately off by just a little bit, to give it sort of a different feel, like it's maybe like you are reading like an unedited book. You know what I mean? Like
I don't know. I think Happy Gilmore's grandma gave a nuanced and humanist portrayal of a woman ravaged by interdimensional demons.
Okay, but there's that. And my other issue with the film is that the budget hinders it from realizing its potential in a lot of different scenes. You have individual scenes where everything comes together beautifully, like the scene where she's driving and they're entering Hobbs End, and she looks out the window and she's like in the clouds and all that, and then they transition into the tunnel, into the bridge tunnel, and go into. I mean, that's just beautiful. That's just a very well done scene. There's a lot of things like that really work very well. And then there's other moments in it where you just kind of go, yeah, that didn't quite pull it off. Maybe if they had another couple $1 million to really realize that, it might have come together a little bit better.
They just keep.
Yeah, I hear what you mean. But so there was stuff that really works in here, and I feel like that driving scene is a mixed bag. It's of both worlds to me, because when you do just see the sky underneath the car, that looks silly and chintzy to me, and kind of ruins it. But when the bicycle boy just suddenly becomes a long-haired, wrinkled old man, I'm just like, that that got me. That had to be
turns into John Carpenter.
Lean back from the skiing.
It turns into John Carpenter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Well, John Carpenter without his mustache, which is an abomination.
He's a hell beast. So that moment, that has the scariest moment in the whole film for me, which is just, it's this very simple thing, just driving down a highway at night or a side road at night, and all of a sudden the yellow lines just disappear and it's pitch black outside. I think that's incredible. That's such great Nightmare Lost highway imagery. Oh, it's so good.
Yep.
Well, and I like that boy. So, all right, scariest bits in the movie. When Happy Gilmore's grandma, when you pan down and just see her naked husband chained to her foot, that's a great unsettling image that doesn't have to rely on the effects, you know.
He's moaning in pain.
Yeah, I know. Just moaning and groaning.
Kicking him.
Great stuff.
Shut up.
Yeah. Great. Wonderful stuff. And then I really like the gag of the painting.
It's great.
Changing and becoming more Lovecraftified. Fantastic stuff. Just unsettling, you know, not exactly subtle because Sam Neill like draws our attention to it and really like, you know, looks at it, but it's done so simply and so cheaply. Like, because I definitely agree with you, Matt. It's the effects really hold this back for me. It's incredible to me. I had to look. I was stunned to find that this is 1994. Yeah, this is the year after Jurassic Park.
This is Sam Neill's follow up to Jurassic Park. He's like, yes, that film. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Terminator's been out, and then we get to the eldritch horrors from beyond time and space are coming, invading our reality at the end of this movie, and they look like they're borrowed from a Gwar stage show. You know, like it just. Right. That part's such a letdown for me. Monsters, it kind of deflates everything.
It's some serious rubber monsters, and you know, I find.
But they look worse than The Thing did 10 years ago.
Well, you know, everything looked worse than The Thing.
Yeah,
I know.
But it's absolutely a budget. I mean, I have a feeling that they stretched the budget. They took a pair of pliers and squeezed every bit of value out of every penny they could to get this film made. Matter of fact, how much? I mean, you wonder how much it cost to get Charlton Heston in there for what was probably a day's work. You know, he was. You know, I mean, he could have shot both of his scenes in 5 hours.
Probably
that's
did.
including lunch.
Yeah,
he was probably on lunch from the break from the set of Wayne's World 2.
Yeah,
you mean Charlton Heston as Jackson Harglaw, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, what a great name.
What a great character to like give the name in the credits, you know, the as credit for just who gives a shit about that guy?
It's shocking that Charlton Heston is playing that role. That should be, you know, any number of John Carpenter character actors that would just pop up and you wouldn't really remember their name, just their face, you know? Like, why isn't Peter Jason playing that role? I guess the Peter Jason performance in this is he's one of the best ones.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah.
He's a hoot.
As the sweaty insurance fraud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the other good scare is the axe murderer attack at the beginning.
Yep, it's great.
But that's this is the movie in microcosm. Just when you see him, you know, I love the staging of that shot.
So good.
He's Sam Neill sitting there kind of holding court with his buddy in the booth. And through the window, you see the axe murderer coming across the street. And it's so great. And he attacks, and that's genuinely scary. And then he raises an axe over Sam Neill's body and growls, "Have you read Sutter Kane?" And I'm like, okay, I don't know if that line was as scary as you thought it was on the page. Like,
could have been delivered, and to your point there, that's one of the instances where I think the acting is subpar because it doesn't sell it. But to your point on that scene, I wish that they had kept the entire scene in a long shot where you just have Bernie Casey and Sam Neill talking to each other, and everything happens across the street, and he gradually comes across instead of cutting to a scene where you put the focus on him. If they had left the focus on it, so you have to see him across the street coming the entire time, I think it would have been both scary and also a little bit humorous. Going, nobody notices this guy coming towards the window with an axe, but. Anyway,
it's weird to me that doesn't happen.
Like Michael Haneke type of move.
But why doesn't that happen? They clearly were going for that. I mean, it seems like that was the shot as intended. And I don't know, maybe something went wrong and they didn't get it or something and they had to cut away for a moment. But it seems obvious that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I suspect they did it to cut time out. I think the entire sequence of him walking and crossing the street probably was too long in the edit. And they said, all right, well, let's put an edit in there to kind of speed things up. That'd be my guess. But I don't know.
Should have kept that in.
And
It's cool.
But I think the one special effect that holds up really well, and I remember they used this in the commercials, and it probably sold half the tickets, is the scene where Jurgen Prochnow, reaches up, and breaks the fourth wall in a way, I don't know if you want to call it that, but rips himself and the screen open to reveal the portal behind him. That's very well done.
Well, it's weird.
I think that's that's one of those shots that, it didn't need to be technically perfect in order to sell it. And I thought that one really sold well. And I know why you saw it in all the commercials for it, because that's the money shot of the movie as far as special effects go.
Well, that seems to be kind of at odds with the other like monster effects throughout this movie, which are sometimes when they're in their the Thing mold, their body horror, people are mutating into monsters mold can be effectively unsettling. And then the tearing the page of reality apart, it's so stagey, I guess, that maybe that activates my metatextual biases, I guess.
Oh, okay. See, for me, I loved that. Yeah. That to me is absolutely the point. The whole when that happens in the movie, it's like, yes, okay, now we're finally going to go full crazy.
And we do. That's sort of a demarcation point for the rest of the film, which is the breakdown of objective reality. That's the thing. This is a grab bag. I mean, it's certainly got a plenty of monsters and zombies and shit popping up. A lot of rubber beasts, but that's not really what it's hanging its hat on. As to the nature of the horror. It is about madness, and it is about reality and stuff like that, and the way we perceive the world, which is hard shit to handle. It's a rare horror film that can pull that off. It's just sort of a bonus on the side that it is also chock full of rubber monsters and axe murderers and shit like that. Giant malignants coming out of the back of Jurgen Prochnow's head. All those things are, they're a flavor in the sauce, honestly. As to sort of the main game of this film, and that's why I like this one so much. In part, it's just it has everything going on in it.
That I want that flavor to be the entree for me. That's
mm-hmm. I want to touch on something.
When the alternative is metatextual.
Sure. But John, I think a key reason though why this movie works at all is Jurgen Prochnow. He's interesting. He's an actor I like anyway. Mm-hmm. He's one of those great underplay actors, and his line delivery, he has that like whisper talk that's a borderline monotone that when he's cast in the right role really, really works. And I think he's not just great here. I think he's exceptional here, just perfectly understated with a face that looks like a baseball mitt. He's just got that leather. I was watching this going, God, how old was he here? And it's like, God, he's younger than I am now, but whatever, but
it's also attached to like the feathered mane of one of Charlie's Angels.
Very much so.
Very weird look.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's got that just perfect evil, subtly evil look in his eye, that there's a lot going on with that character. He brings a lot more to the character than what's on the written page, I think. And I think he is a big part of why this movie works.
Interesting.
I think he's great. I don't know if subtlety is a note that I would cite as anywhere in this movie really, but as a strength of the performance even.
He underplays it compared to a lot of other people though. I mean, Sam's very over the top. A lot of Sam's side characters are very over the top.
Sam's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean,
you want to see Sam
he's in
freak
acting mode.
This is not reality. Oh yeah, it's great. Prochnow is actually, I don't know if he might be one of my weak points, actually. I'm not sure about this performance. Yeah. I feel it's a hell of a role. Sutter Kane, is he a god or a pawn in this? Like, it's very difficult to kind of parse exactly what his role is. Like, he is treated like a god by some people, but I think by the end, the implication is no, he is a vessel for the creatures from the outer darkness that are using him to come to our world. And
that's definitely my takeaway.
But he plays it like he's the mastermind. And I think that there can be moments of that, but I don't know that it's an oddly mannered kind of like, I'm such a character. He's got a bit of an elfin quality to him. And I don't know. I feel like there is a way that this character really lands, and I don't know if he does. And I do like the look. I do like how weird he is. There's some very fun line readings. Did I ever tell you my favorite color is blue? Shit like that. Fun.
Yeah.
But we do have David Warner and John Glover right there, and I don't know that either of them would have been more interesting in the role. So I don't know. I don't know about Jurgen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're Jurgen me up, baby.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Al.
I like him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think he hurts the film or anything. He's
and I do.
He's just a little bit
I
like
think
a Doctor
also
Who
like
villain. That's all.
Is that a negative in this
it's
context?
Okay.
I kind of think there's something okay with me for me about an insane author character
Mm-hmm.
being having kind of an affected characterness about them.
Oh well, sure,
like,
of course. I mean, he would always have that.
I buy that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That he is himself writing himself as a character in one of his books, and
right,
or his ultimate book, the Book of Reality, or whatever the hell we're talking about here. But as such, he's playing up, the creepiness of it in a way, and enjoying himself doing it. And I buy that from that character for whatever reason, I guess.
Right there with you.
And it helps that he's not ultimately the mastermind god of this universe, that he is being used, and as I read it, destroyed by the creatures that are just using his all-around book deal, I guess, to break into our reality.
Right.
Yeah.
His book deal and movie deal, by the way, too.
That's true.
Yeah, well, there's a movie. Yeah, what a turn. It's good. It's good. I like him. It feels like the character Sutter Kane is potentially like an all-timer interesting character, interesting villain for in the John Carpenter canon. I don't know if it quite reaches it. Maybe it's not entirely proc now. Maybe it is just the script doesn't quite square the knot on how to handle this character. There's a lot of things he has to do, a lot of things he has to serve, and yeah, for a film that is not very long, and I get that you don't want to overdo Sutter Kane. You don't want to have him be too explained. And this movie does not really fall in the trap of explaining too much. That's for sure.
No.
But
no.
Yeah, I find him hard to define. Is he a god? Is it just a god complex? And I agree that it's not. That yes, at the end he is a cat's paw. But I don't think it's necessarily. I would like a scene where he realizes that maybe, or comes to understand that, or you just see how the toll that being this vessel has caused him, like what this has done to him, and just seeing him exhausted in one scene. Maybe
he does have the moment. He does have the moment where he says he thought that he was writing this, but then he realized that the forgive me, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but he's like, I thought I was writing this, and it turns out it was real, and they were just telling, those from beyond were telling this to me. Mm-hmm. So I mean,
but that he does it with like a wry little smile. It's like, ooh,
yeah. But but at the same time, that struck me as him thinking, I'm a god for creating this, and then I found out I was actually a pawn that was being used as a vessel to convey this information, and I'm okay with that. By the way, my favorite color is blue. That kind of thing. But I think by the end of it, he's reconciled that he is meant to almost be not just the conduit, but in many ways the sacrifice for the great old ones to re-enter. His sacrifice is him becoming the portal, and one thing I have with that should have been the end of his character. The fact that he comes back a little bit later on and has the bus scene is kind of like, well, I thought he was dead. He was the portal now. That's one thing that makes me wonder if that really belonged there. But another thing you brought up, John, which the movie is short. At 90, with credits, it's like 95 minutes.
Yeah,
yeah, something like that. And I wonder if they deleted a lot of footage to get it down to that 90-minute runtime because they probably didn't have a lot of confidence in it, and maybe thought, well, let's get one more showing in a day. But it feels like there's a lot missing. Perhaps not a lot, but maybe about 15 minutes of maybe some connective tissue or just additional stuff that might have made some things flow a little bit better. But I like what's there. I just don't love it.
Well, Carpenter makes short
It
movies.
would have ballooned the budget considerably, but I would have loved another 15 minutes of seeing the world actually falling apart, rather than just having it happen sort of outside the window of the asylum. And then
it must be getting really bad out there.
That's
let's see it.
Yeah, you're telling me like the fireworks factory is right over there outside of the frame. Like, let's get to it. But I wonder if, going back to what you were talking about, Sutter Kane, the character being like not completely realized, and you don't get like a sense of maybe who he was as a human being before he became, a vessel for the Quado thing growing out of his head. And I wonder if that's part of the having this written by a 20-year-old and not having the strong take. Like, you would need a stronger take on the author character and what the subtext is about the act of creation here and all that, maybe to fully realize all that. And instead here, it's kind of what I was complaining about earlier. It's sort of incidental that he's writing horror novels. I mean, they could have opened this portal to the other dimension by, via nuclear experimentation or something. It could be The Mist just as easily, it feels like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is about
I want a little bit more
the 90s celebrity publishing world to some extent. I mean, we're living in there for the first half hour of this, at least, all the Stephen King parallels, all the, like, well, he doesn't live in Maine. He lives in New Hampshire. Oh, the stuff like that. They are going for modern celebrity author in a big way, which, I mean, even King wasn't as big as Sutter Kane is presented in this film. Essentially, the only author I can think of ever being as big as this, at least in modern memory, is J.K. Rowling at the height of the Harry Potter books. Like
Tom Clancy, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, we're not having midnight parties for, a clear and present danger, though. Like this, I don't know. I mean,
yeah, there's a level of fanaticism around Harry Potter that was never there for the Rainbow Six extended universe.
That's fair. That's fair. But I mean, but at his peak, around in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, there was definitely some fervor about it, especially as the movies were starting to come out. But yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'll agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What if it had been like Jackie Collins that was writing these things, and instead of monsters coming through, it was 50-foot tall Karens coming through.
No, that is fun though. That's the amusing idea. It's like what if it was a John Irving-esque author? You get like. I mean, I think the thing to do, and this would have to happen after J.K. Rowling, of course. This movie predates Harry Potter, but to do like a YA author opening a portal to hell would be really fun. Like, if you were to remake this, I would want it to be like a J.K. Rowling-esque character,
Well, that's where you would buy the sort of cult leader aspect of it, of the fan base being young and impressionable.
Yeah,
I mean, what's interesting, but something that makes it feel like ring a little false, the cult of personality around Sutter Kane, is the J.K. Rowlingness of it, and how her life story post Harry Potter has sort of just demonstrated that the fan base will not follow you anywhere. That they're, in fact, like she is.
Yes, but if that had happened,
she's doing fine, but at the mercy of the fans to a certain extent.
I do wonder what would have happened if those things had started to come out between like book 5 and 6 instead of after we were clear of this narrative. And also an earlier time, a little
when we didn't need her anymore.
Yeah. Exactly. Interesting. I don't know. But regardless, this predates J.K. Rowling as a film, so they're not really commenting on that in this. No. All the same, cult of personality.
My point, I guess,
and King does have that.
My point is that I don't a little bit. Yeah, I don't feel like it's commenting on Stephen King that much, though.
I mean, to the extent that he is the celebrity author that they are kind of trying to emulate and reference here. I think it's...
Oh, sure. But if you took that seriously, then it would be saying that Stephen King's novels are a threat to society. And I don't think the movie buys that at all.
No, and not only that, I think the book titles would be more of a deliberate parody on some of the actual Stephen King novel names.
It's deliberately doing Lovecraft in that way. Like, I mean, the aesthetic of the books is a little bit King, but it's also a lot bit Lovecraft. And the titles are all, like the Hobbs End Horror, the Terror in the Darkness or whatever they are. They're very explicitly Lovecraft-esque. And of course, there's no world where Lovecraft-esque novels capture the the imagination of the world in the way these have. That is a buy-in you have to make, and just well, I guess it's the influence of the Elder Ones that makes people all of a sudden really into cosmic horror to the point where it is a global phenomenon.
Yeah, but that's what to me makes it feel like it could just be a jar of Satan juice that they opened in the basement just as easily. That is causing all this.
Yeah,
they play D&D, right?
Yeah.
Satanic panic.
So, I think there's something here though too about why this movie is only scary in like isolated gags to me.
Yeah.
As a whole, it doesn't build up any like real dread for me, and I think it's because there isn't really any cast in this movie.
Oh, nonsense! There's a great cast. You got Vigo the Carpathian.
Okay.
You got
Vigo
Happy Gilmore's grandmother.
Right,
you got Anakin Skywalker. You got Julia Carmen.
None of that. Okay.
Julia Carmen there.
What I mean by that, yes, is that for the body of this movie, the main, like, once we get the thing gets going, our guys that we're following are Sam Neill and Julie Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie Carmen goes down quickly in like her first interaction with him. So there's a big chunk of this movie where Sam Neill is the only like human that we have any investment in, and he's going crazy, but it's like, because there's no supporting cast, there's nobody to kill. We know from the opening that Sam Neill his life is not in danger here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He'll end up going crazy. But so whatever sort of threats they're dealing with, whether it's packs of Dobermans or Happy Gilmore's grandma becoming a thing monster in the basement or whatever, it's like, well, yeah, but it's not going to be hurt. So maybe if it's once the Linda character is turned into a monster halfway through, there's like nobody that I'm concerned about left. Sam Neill is the only character of note, and he's also plot armored from the framing device, such that like whatever weird shit goes down, no matter how crazy anything looks, like I always am aware that it's theater. He's going to get out of there and end up in an asylum.
Well, he's going to lose his mind. That is the main thing that is going to happen to him. I mean, we know that. Seeing that happen, I think.
Yeah, but that's decided.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But see, I mean, look, by the end of this, it is revealed that he is a fictional character that does not actually exist, right. and is in fact does not have a backstory beyond what is required for his I guess for the thematics of the story. That he is a cynical skeptic. That's really his entire character, because there's no need for any more. He is entirely a mechanism of this first off, a fictional narrative, and then secondly, he's a bagman to bring the message to the publishing house, and that is the entire purpose of his existence. So no, I mean, by the end, we're not worried about him as a person, because he's not a person. Exactly, he is a construct.
Right. But then we're in full metatextual land, and I'm just making the jerk off motions.
I prefer it as him. I mean, I get that he's a fictional character, and he's doing the stuff that has, it's been preordained because it was written this way. But I still prefer the narrative that, kind of the is he a replicant or not, argument of Blade Runner. Is he fictional or not? And I prefer to think that he's just a normal guy doing this. That got sucked into doing this. That Sutter Kane had his purpose of being the vessel, the conduit by which these stories were written to drive people insane, and then Sam Neill, his purpose as a person was literally to go find Sutter Kane where he was writing the final book and deliver it and get it to where it needed to be. So in many respects, they were both puppets. I prefer to look at it contextually in that fashion versus.
So do you think that John Trent has a childhood?
Yeah, he's a normal person. He got this is his gig.
Mm-hmm.
He's a real person who did these things, and again, but his purpose, and he didn't know this, much like Sutter Kane didn't know what his purpose was. Was to eventually be the vessel of writing the stories was Sutter Kane. The vessel of delivering the stories, the final one, was John Trent. That's the way I kind of look at it, and because he was part of that puppet. He was able to be self-realized enough in the process of doing this that he was able to see the insanity going on around him and be part of it that way. So in many respects, I kind of look at it as him being told that he's fictional is maybe a
A
line.
long con?
That he's
like
told.
it's a
long con? Yeah.
There. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of look at it that way. He's told just enough information to get him to do what it is that they need him to do. And if they need to convince him that he's a fictional character, well, then so be it.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
that's one way.
Well,
for me, it's the way I think about it. It gets it out of the meta contextual thing. But then again, you do have the ending at the end where he's literally watching the movie with you in the audience, which must have been really interesting in the theater when it came out in '94.
That probably was more interesting to see in the movie theater than it is to watch at home. Actually, you're right. But I don't know. It's a type of thing that does not interest me. And it's, I don't know. That type of stuff just always feels like characters that know their characters and blah, blah, blah. It all never feels as clever to me as the author seems to think it is. But I think I look at it sort of like what Matt was saying, and maybe it's not exactly a con, but it's getting across the point to him that whether he's a fictional construct or not, he's not in control of his own.
Right.
destiny.
Oh yeah. He can't get rid of the book.
That much is clear.
He can't get rid of the book. He burns it. It comes back.
He can't drive out of town.
Right. Mm-hmm. I love that scene of him trying to drive out of town, by the way. That's great fun.
Yeah.
Seeing the lanes disappear and coming back and all that. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
And you keep seeing the bicycle boy, and then she's doing different right handlebar tricks on his bicycle, the different iterations. That's fun. And then it also has, what may be the apex of all cinema, which is a mutant lady carrying an axe, just running up to Sam Neill and going, "Fuck you."
That's a very John Carpenter moment.
I loved it. Yeah.
So cool.
I loved it.
I had to pause. I wasn't scared of this movie that much, but I had to pause the film to laugh so hard at that. Just killed me.
It is a good moment.
I rewound it like 3 times.
I really like all the monsters and shit going on in this that you don't really get an explanation for. You just see these sort of repetitive imagery of the alleyway with the cop beating up the tagger, and you just keep seeing that, and then next time he's like a sea monster or whatever, and or the monster kids just running around the city chasing dogs in packs. That's great. Mm-hmm. I love that. You never see him do anything to the dogs. You just see like a dog comes running and like 12 kids running after the dog. Shit like that. I love. And that monster face on the little girl's great. You're my mommy. All that shit.
Yeah. and that to me strikes me as being a budget limitation issue where, they probably had something bigger planned.
Oh, well,
but
it helps.
Yeah, we just don't have the money for it. So, all right. Mm-hmm. So what we got is what we got. I think those scenes really suffer from the lack of budget. I think in 1994 dollars, another $1 million in the budget would have made a huge difference on some of these scenes.
Maybe. The scale of this is one of its charms for me. This is right before CGI. Right before every movie has CGI. We're going to see Escape from L.A. in a few weeks here, and that's one of the most infamous bad CGI movies ever made. It is clearly something that is not in his toolbox, Mr. Carpenter. And I'm not saying, obviously, that you would have made CGI. You spent that extra $1 million on CGI here. But the low-rent quality of this is charming to me. It places it in a time and a place and an aesthetic. All the rubber monsters, all the 80s slasher films are the same way, like none of those films had money, but they have incredible, memorable visuals. Always.
Right. But it places it in a time and place. But to me, that place is 1986, not 1994, which is Will Hefter, Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. And not everything is laid in CGI yet,
right.
But it was out there. And, not for nothing, there's better puppets out there too.
Right. And to your point, one of you made a point earlier that the creature effects 12 years earlier in The Thing were far superior to what we see in this film.
It is an unfair standard. I understand. It's John Carpenter. Yeah. No movie has creature effects as good as The Thing, though. Like none. It's,
right. I know, but I put the creature effects in this movie on about the same par as what we got in Hellraiser, for instance. Where it's just there's no budget. There's no budget. They aren't convincing in the slightest, and you just kind of got to roll with it.
That's a film that I feel lives in a similar place. Hellraiser, I could double feature those two together quite well, I think.
Right.
Sure, but Hellraiser came out in 1987, so it returns to my point.
Right.
Okay.
And that was another no budget movie. I think Hellraiser's budget was $1 million, maybe $1.5 million. I don't know what the budget was on In the Mouth of Madness, but I'm sure Charlton Heston was probably more than the budget of Hellraiser.
I think it was 16 to 18, something like that, which is low.
That seems like a lot compared to the last couple we did. Well, no, Invisible Man is a big, more than twice big movie, but, a big expensive movie. It's a small, dumb movie, but it's an expensive.
This movie made $8 million though, so no one wishes they spent more on it. Sadly, except maybe us, I guess. I don't know. I get that it. Like I said, it is an imperfect masterpiece for me. There are things about it that are clearly compromised or difficult. I think we were talking about what the ending is to us a moment ago. How neither of us quite agree on what the end of this film means. That is a plus for me. That is, I like not being able to tell you exactly what the fuck is going on in the end of this film. Like, what is reality? I don't know. I don't know where we stand at the end. Is this just all real within the context of a book that is written by Sutter Kane? Is there no objective reality? Is this is the reality of this film that this is a book that he wrote and therefore it has no bearing on the outside world? Maybe even Sutter Kane's celebrity is fake? This is the stuff that I like. This kind of mind screw. Wait, how do I parse this? I don't think there's an answer either. This is one where the last 30 minutes of the film, the way they work for me, did I tell you my favorite color is blue? Yes, you delivered the manuscript to me 3 months ago, and Linda Stiles never existed. All these things, it is nothing less than just a filmmaker trying to make objective reality fall apart. And he's doing it with nothing but editing and a little bit of economy. He doesn't have money to do an actual apocalypse. So it's just, there's no reality anymore. There's nothing you can rely on as fact in the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes of this film. It is just madness.
If it was just editing and filmmaking tricks, though, I would respect it more. The problem is it's those things and some bad puppets.
I have such affection for the bad puppets. There's no puppets in this I don't like. Okay. When that corridor full of monsters chasing him.
I love that.
Yeah, it's all good. Even when it's bad, it's good.
And matter of fact, that scene, the corridor with the monsters running down it, that was the scene that made me directly think of Hellraiser, because you have that one scene when Kirsty's first playing with the box where that hallway opens and she enters it, and there's that one creature that's its head's down below and it's crawling on the walls and all that and chases her out before the Cenobites come. That's exactly what I immediately flashed on that scene on this and drew that parallel.
Yeah.
And I know we keep coming back to this, the Thing is an unfair comparison to hold anything to, but also the Cenobites are such a better design than whatever these Lovecraftian beasts are. And that's also the Cenobites are an unfair standard to hold monster puppet designs to as well.
There is not an iconic monster in this. There's good ones, but there's not one creature that you're just holy shit, that thing, And part of that is I think they don't show you stuff full on ever. It is kind of existing in that impossible Lovecraft thing where if you look on this thing, you'll go crazy. And that's all the description you get in the prose. I think it's kind of wrestling with that a little bit. I mean, it wants to have monsters, clearly. It wants to have gooey rubber beasts. Yeah. They're pouring out of the darkness, and racing towards the protagonist. But you can't just show them for a couple reasons. And one is you'll see how rubber and monstery they look. You'll see that they are limited by, the imagination of the people who are designing them and the budget they were given to work for. So I think he's doing
and even if they're really, really good, elaborate puppets, they're still going to become knowable in a way that now the Xenomorph becomes knowable. We've now seen it from so many angles over the course of 7 films versus the original. I think the most direct look we ever get is in the final form of that painting in the motel lobby. And that's not bad design. I like the monster stuff
right.
as depicted in that painting.
To your point though about the fact that the description, it should in theory be enough of the monster that if you look at it, it goes insane. To your point, when Sutter Kane does become the portal and he's looking into the darkness, when Trent is looking into the darkness and you can see that the other side of the portal is all, the written words from the written pages, and she's reading from the book and all that. I thought that was a really cool scene because it meant, it's leaving it to the imagination based upon her description. I thought that was a very, very strong scene and one of the better scenes in the movie. Yeah.
And I even love the third person narration from Styles that pops up for no discernible reason other than, I guess is she looking at the book at least at that moment? It feels classical. It feels like and the prose are so purple as well. They're so Lovecraftian, like, as Trent looked into the abyss, a saraband of creatures poured out, Hall, Spall, slimy, scaly, rushing in, with a maddening intensity. It's just all overwritten in the way Lovecraft is. That's very fun.
Yeah, like a dungeon master. She's reading it like a dungeon master in a D&D game.
And I think that would be better if we saw even less of it and just heard the description.
You don't see much, and you want to see something. Corridor of monsters.
Yeah,
they built an entire wall of monsters, and then they push it at Sam Neill. Apparently, that's you got to put
that's
that.
How they did that.
Yeah,
nice.
It's a bunch of
you got to have something. If it's a movie about monsters, you got to have the monsters in there. I mean, you can't just have reaction shots of people looking at something. That wouldn't really fly.
I don't know. Is that true? Isn't there what about that? What's his name? God, isn't there a movie called Monsters?
Sure.
With Scoot McNairy. That's what
you see the monsters.
Yeah.
And they're kaijus.
Yeah, there's a monster shot at the end, right?
Yeah, but no, I mean, to your point, this is the eternal problem of adapting Lovecraft or any cosmic horror, really. These things, they are so much more effective when you don't know exactly what they look like, when your mind does all the work. And even that is substandard, because to actually understand what this thing is would drive you mad, is part of the narrative and part of the whole deal with the creature. You can't put it on screen. And people have been struggling with this forever. Now, you could argue that, there are times when people have met that challenge. Carpenter did in The Thing. That xenomorph, in the first film, pretty fucking good. But it's a hard target to miss, especially when you're explicitly doing Lovecraft, when you're explicitly having those lines about madness-inducing visages. And I mean, this is more a movie about madness than it is about monsters, really, when you get right down to it.
It is.
I agree with you.
It's interesting that the movies you cite as the most successful versions of that are these the creatures we're talking about. They are not interdimensional cosmic beasts in the sort of
they're aliens
mythology of those films. Yeah, they're alien creatures, but they're organic creatures. Those are not supernatural threats the way that Lovecraftian beasts are. In a way that one of the other best sort of representations of Lovecraft is on the other end of the spectrum, purely sort of conceptual madness-inducing stuff is the movie Sunshine, where it presents the sun as just a beast that drives us crazy to look upon.
It's funny you bring that up, because I was actually one of the things that I was struck with, and probably because obviously because Sam Neill's in both, was Event Horizon.
Well, he had his thing.
I think there's they're obviously very different characters, but it is in many respects madness inducing, because on the original crew, did they go to hell or not? But either way, when they went there, something drove them batshit. And had them tear it apart. But so I just, matter of fact, I wonder if Paul Anderson, directly wanted to cast Sam Neill in Event Horizon based upon seeing In the Mouth of Madness, going, I want you to essentially play that character, but a little bit more grounded.
Well, he's good at it. He's real good in horror movies, Sam Neill. He's made a lot of them. And there's nothing better than a Sam Neill freakout. Both those movies have that.
Pretty good stuff.
Right.
Possession has some all-timer Sam Neill freakouts. Omen,
never saw that.
The Omen 3. He plays Damien as an adult. He freaks out in it. Yeah. He's he's a lot of fun for this sort of role. And it's interesting. I don't think of him as like
he's got the right look.
He does.
He has this grim kind of evil look of it. From what I understand, he's supposed to be a real nice guy in life, in real life. Yeah. But regardless, he has that look about him of evil, kind of like Michael Ironside. You know, you look at Michael Ironside and you go, well, he's the bad guy. Well, he just looks like the bad guy, even though he's supposed to be the nicest guy in real life too.
Well, that is another thing about Sam Neill is like, I think Dr. Alan Grant is the outlier for him. Like, that's the role I'm surprised he's
but that's what 90% of people know
exactly,
him for.
Yeah.
Like, that's like all they know him for.
That's the thing that's unusual for him. That it doesn't really feel like his vibe, if you're familiar with his other work, to cast him in this sort of Harrison Ford type hero role. And yet, that's the one he's known for. I mean, because it's Jurassic Park, of course. But yeah, I mean, generally
he was
speaking,
almost James Bond.
Was he almost James Bond?
Yeah, he screen tested. Matter of fact, when they were looking at retiring Roger Moore, and they ended up going with Pierce Brosnan and then Dalton. But they screen tested. Matter of fact, you can go online and you can see it. They screen tested him, and everybody liked him as the new Bond, except for Barbara Broccoli. And she said no.
Too dark.
But she said no. He's not the guy. So I mean, and that nixed it right there. It was either Barbara or Cubby that said no.
I probably would have been Cubby, but
forgive me. I maybe it's one of them though. One of them though. Everyone was high on the guy, and either Barbara or Cubby said no, he's not it, and that ended it right there. But yeah, there's a screen test. He was about as close as you could get to someone getting the gig.
Well, he would have been he would have been a Daniel Craig type Bond for sure. You know, the dark haunted asshole Bond. Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah, and that might have been interesting to us. To be fair, though, like Pierce Brosnan was the guy.
Yeah,
like, they didn't fuck it up by doing that. Like, I know his movies aren't that great, but it's not because he wasn't like a good choice for Bond. I don't think. I think he's pretty spot on. Nonetheless, that's a whole tangent. We don't have time to open that up. Look,
no, I know. I'll just chime in. I'm ride or die in Roger Moore. And I'm one of the few I know on that, but he's my guy.
That's a different. This is a different episode. We have reached the end of the golden age of Carpenter. We have reached the end of reality itself. We have torn open a rift in dimensions, and now we are entering a strange and unsettling new reality where John Carpenter might kind of suck as a filmmaker. But that's what we're staring down the barrel of.
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely make an argument for the next bunch of films sucking. There's no question about that. I don't know. I mean, I have plenty of time to defend or not defend them in the coming weeks, I guess. Village of the Damned, the next film, comes out the same year as this, 1994, which is crazy. I believe this film was delayed, is why that is. But the gulf between effort in the mouth
was it delayed from 1986?
Oh, God damn you!
Good one.
Village of the Damned is like the difference in enthusiasm and effort between this and In the Mouth of Madness is striking. They feel like different people made them for sure, or people at least in very different places emotionally. And you would think that like a guy who has made a 1950s classic horror film, a kind of dated, cheesy horror film by modern standards, turned it into an incredible horror film, as he did in The Thing, could maybe pull that again with Village of the Damned. Does not go down that way.
I've never seen it. Maybe I'll disagree.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to like this.
I don't think you will. Yeah. Village of the Damned feels like an obligation. Like he had signed a deal and said, you're going to make this thing come hell or high water. And he said, fine. I'm going to whip it out in 2 weeks and not put any effort or anything into it.
It is a shockingly low effort film.
It really is. It's a staggering film of just banality.
What would you say is the least effortful Carpenter we've seen up to this point?
Oh, it's got to be Invisible Man.
Yeah. Okay. I think that.
I mean, and look, I will say, I'll say this, okay, because for whatever issues I have with Mouth of Madness, sort of like on conceptual levels, or in the execution of certain effects, it is an effortful film.
Yeah.
There is a lot of effort. People are trying in this, and they might not be doing exactly what I like, but they're hitting a lot of the targets that they're aiming for.
There's some thought into the shot compositions and everything too. There's some interesting shots in there. You could tell they did more than one take of some scenes. Whereas I swear in Village of the Damned, they went with the first take just to get this thing done. It's staggering. I mean, it's the acting quality in Village of the Damned is. If there were any rehearsals, I would be very, very shocked.
Do you know who's in that film?
I don't know anyone defending that one.
Do you know any of the cast?
I want to say
it's got a weird cast.
No, I don't think
a weird, interesting cast.
Yeah.
I was going to say Donald Sutherland's in it, but I think that's because he was in a body.
He was in the Puppet Masters at the same time, but
right.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with it. No, this film stars Christopher Reeve, Kirstie Alley, and Mark Hamill.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Probably some other people.
They all
in there.
had a week free.
I bet Peter Jason's in there too. It's
one hopes.
Yeah, and a whole bunch of creepy kids.
It's
with white hair.
But no, don't get your hopes up. So why did it all go away? Is the question. Like what happened to John Carpenter?
I think he lost his passion.
Is it just that simple? I mean, Memoirs of an Invisible Man is the sort of film that will kill your passion. For sure.
Yeah.
But he turned around and made this movie. This is his next film.
And it didn't but it didn't succeed.
Yeah.
Right.
This film did not succeed. I mean
he's
and when you put your heart, you go, you know what, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try on this one. You can tell Carpenter tried. I think when this one failed, he just said, F it, I'm done. I'll cash a couple paychecks at this point. I think he was like that until Escape from LA happened. And because an Escape from LA is something that has its defenders. I am not one of them, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. But I think Escape from LA was his one chance to get his mojo back, and I think he tried, but I think a lot of decisions made on that were very wrong-headed, and of course the whole debate upon the quality of the CGI is a whole other.
I don't think there's much debate on that one. Yeah.
Well, there's debate as to whether or not it's deliberately bad as an artistic choice.
Yeah,
because I mean, it's not just bad. It's like artistically choice bad. You know what I mean? Because I mean, it's
I know what you mean, but I almost never buy that rationale for either bad effects or bad performances. It's intentionally stilted.
Escape from LA. Give it its day in court.
But one example of something that I think that where the subpar special effects, or not subpar, but not 100% convincing special effects work for the film is a movie like Dark City. Where that
those are much better effects than what we're talking about.
Yeah, but they're not perfect.
They're designed in a way. They're
right.
It's like how you're looking at Beetlejuice and it looks like models and miniatures, and that's charming and good and makes the movie better. I mean, it's that kind of thing. No, that's not what Escape from LA is. Okay, do we have any other last thoughts on this film? On this really interesting film from 1994, In the Mouth of Madness. We didn't give much mention to Julie Carmen. I think she's very good in this. Not much of a career beyond a few 80s horror films in this thing, but I like her in this. I think it's a neat performance, and she's different than most people would be. If you were going to say, well, we could get Julianne Moore from 1994 to do this instead, I'd be like, well, yes, that's better. But, you're not getting Julianne Moore for this, even back then. So I think she rises.
Yeah, but 1994 Julianne Moore is like saying, oh, if we could get Thing level special effects for this. Well, yeah, sure. If you can do that, do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she's fine.
I don't expect you to.
Yeah, I think she's fine. She's adequate. She doesn't sink the film. She doesn't elevate it.
Mm-hmm.
She does what's required, and she's fine. I mean, the movie rises or sinks or swims based upon Sam Neill, whether or not you buy into his performance. And I think he's very over the top, but it works for what he's trying to be here, which is just slightly off center. So I buy in on that. I think again that a lot of the supporting actors are borderline terrible, but at the same
Vigo?
time,
Vigo, you don't like Vigo in this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of that just it doesn't. And again, the agent that goes, "Do you read Sutter King?" Hey, you couldn't have gotten another take of that, But whatever, again, it doesn't kill the film for me. It is what it is. But as far as final thoughts, I enjoy the movie very much. But for me, it feels like It's just, it needs another $5 million in the budget to realize things and make things really, really work. Because there's so many places, and again, and one of you, I forget who said, I'd love to have seen the apocalypse going on outside, versus just being told about it. Show it, don't tell it. Let's see the insanity going on. We get very little of that. We have that little glimpse at the end when the kid comes out with the blood coming out of his eye, going, that he loves the book, and Sam Neill takes the axe to him. So you get a little bit of that, but that feels like a pickup shot going, we need something. You know what I mean? Like in the edit, they go, crap, we need something real quick. Do we have any extra copies in the prop department of the book? Yeah.
This is a premise that you could justify spending $100 million on. I mean, you wouldn't, obviously, but like the narrative and the movie that the world they're building here, you could spend an enormous amount on to make that film. Like it would make sense to do it that way. Obviously no one's going to do that for a John Carpenter horror film about the nature of reality.
Christopher Nolan.
Well, if Nolan wanted to do this, he could do it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
We said the same thing about Prince of Darkness, though, too, that there was a way to blow up the budget of that movie and do it on a larger scale. And that doesn't necessarily help it. I would like a little more of that apocalypse. You're right. But really what I just want is like 4 more mutant axe ladies running up and telling Samuel to fucking solve it at random intervals.
Yeah. And speaking of Prince of Darkness, I think the lack of budget hurt that film more than it hurt this one. I think there's more creativity, and I think they're able to realize a lot more with the budget limitations in this film versus Prince of Darkness. And Prince of Darkness is another film that's killed by some really bad acting.
Yes.
It doesn't hurt this film. Yeah. It doesn't hurt this film as much. And again, I think some of the bad acting could be seen as a directorial choice based upon trying to keep things slightly off kilter, whereas it's just dog shit acting in Prince of Darkness.
I'm afraid so. There's for all the another thing about that is for all the the bizarre stuff about the anti-god and the container of liquid Satan in the basement and how Jesus was an alien. The narrative of Prince of Darkness is very much a tower defense movie. It's just it's another Rio Bravo in a sense. This is so much more ambitious as to what the hell the spine of this story is. It's it has some stuff like the first the second act feels a little like X-Files, which is a skeptic and a believer kind of investigating paranormal activity in small town America, so we're on familiar ground at least for a while, but then it just goes off the road in a wild way. So I think that maybe more than anything, just sort of the ambition of this movie, the narrative ambition, the thematic ambition, just the crazy ideas this is taking on, the breakdown of objective reality, all that it's just exciting to watch. It's just thrilling to me to see this. And, there's enough great monsters and signifiers of Carpenter that I'm having fun before it even gets cooking. From the opening credits on, I'm just on board with this thing. And it was a pleasure to revisit it. I love this one. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I was smiling. I was smiling as I watched it. Again, I liked it a lot. Just don't love it.
We'll see where it lands in the final rankings. They're coming up at the end.
Mm-hmm. I think this is top 5 for me, without a doubt. Even with the bangers in this career, I think this is one of the coolest, one of the most exciting. Anyway, like I said, imperfect masterpiece, though. There's certain things in it, sure. All right, so we've already talked about what's coming up next. This has been Framework. Thank you for joining us, Matt. We appreciate your presence here. We'll have you back again soon. And, if you enjoyed the podcast, please rate and review on the podcast provider of your choice. It increases the visibility of the program. Thank you. And write a review if you're really, really feeling, like you want to. God, why? I was so close to ending this well. I was so close. Okay. So thank you for listening. Good night.